Hello, welcome back to the SML podcast. This is Playing the Field with Field General 007. Got a special show in store for you. Tried to get this out last night. Had some technical difficulties, but we've got a special on the horn segment, and we're just going to go ahead and cut to that right now. All right, today's on the horn segment, we're with the Dolphins owner, Graz. How you doing?
Doing well, thank you.
All right, so I think, you and I had a conversation earlier. We're talking about some of the SML action today. What was the biggest surprise in what's happened today in the SML?
Oh man, it's tough. Ravens winning, not that it was a surprise that they won, but that was definitely a big win for them against the Falcons. And then the Browns knocking down the Bengals. So the AFC North had a lot of big games today.
Yeah, that kind of blew it open almost. With the Ravens going with their win, puts them at 5-3. If the Bengals loss, that keeps them at 5-3. So who are you going to take there in the AFC North this year?
It's funny, we recorded this yesterday, and I think we may have both said the Bengals, but I've got to go with the Ravens right now after that big win.
Honestly, as much crap as I give the kid, hashtag beat the meat, I'm still going to go with the meats. I think I got to go with the Bengals. I think we talked about how the Ravens have been inconsistent offensively over the years. You'll see how they start off hot like their first two seasons, and I think they're putting up really impressive numbers and almost intimidating certain people. And then at times it's like they drop off. So I'm going to go ahead and put hashtag beat the meat for winning the North this year.
Both of these teams, when you play them, you have to outscore them. And I know that's kind of a simple way to look at it, and you have to outscore everybody.
Right.
But both of these teams have been known for their offense, and if you can't stop them, they'll just score every possession.
So the next two divisions that we'll talk about will kind of get us into that second game and the second point of this podcast, which we're going to touch base on. I put a poll out about what do you do at the end of the game when you're down by one. Do you go for two or do you kick it? Well, I'll ask you that in a second. And obviously that kind of comes from the Colts-Broncos game for anyone that didn't see it. The Broncos wound up going for two at the end of it after, and let's not discredit the fact that they came back. What was the score of that game before? I think it was like 24-3, and the Broncos came back within one or something crazy like that.
24-3, yeah, that was it.
Yeah, and I thought it was done. I quit watching, and next thing you know, I read in the chat that the Broncos wound up losing because they went for the two, but they were able to come back against Prime from a 21-point deficit, which is impressive in itself. So now we look at the AFC West. You got the Broncos 3-4, the Chiefs and Raiders at 4-4, and the Chargers at 3-4. I mean, this is a crapshoot of a division right now. Who are you taking?
I'm still taking the Broncos. I'm not nothing against the Chiefs, nothing against the Raiders, because they're actually both very quality opponents. But the Broncos, when they're playing and they're actually getting their games in, they're right in there every year. They had the 1 year where they took off a little bit, but outside of that, they're making it to the second round of the playoffs every year, and they're not just eking in.
Yeah, and I think that's a pretty valid point. The fact that the Broncos are just missing time, letting games sim just due to life or whatever. And I think we're both gonna take the Colts in the AFC South, although. The Titans are a good opponent, and tends to be the one that can give Prime the fits. Are you going to pick the Colts this year?
Yeah, I mean, the Titans beat them last year and took the division, but the 2-game difference at this point, I think it's sad to say, is something that can't be made up at this point, because outside of the Titans, nobody beats the Colts.
So I guess now that we talked about the Colts and the Broncos, and we kind of touched base a little bit on the dilemma of going for two or versus kicking the extra point, what would you do in that situation and why?
Hey, I love the aggression. I love the confidence that the Broncos had there, or maybe it was sheer panic. Who knows? I just know that I'm probably the most conservative team in the SML, so I'm kicking that every single time.
Yeah, I'm not gonna say I've never gone for two because I have. Like sometimes, you just happen to get caught up in the moment, and either you don't have the confidence in your defense to get the stop, or you get caught up in how good you've been offensively, or I guess the only other time I really go for the two is when it's just lagging so bad and you're missing kicks and you just don't have the confidence to kick it. I guess we're gonna abstain from voting when on the AFC East, just due to the fact that we're both in it and you pretty much have it clinched at this point anyway. So we'll go over to the NFC side. You've got the NFC East right now with the Cowboys and Eagles. 6-1 Dallas, 5-2 Philadelphia, and the Eagles were, as Prime likes to call it, the hottest team in the SML for a while, and then they dropped a few games. Why? Who are you going to take here, and why?
Again, what a difference a day makes. Because yesterday, this was such an easy call. It was the Falcons. The Falcons have been living in the Panthers' shadow. The Panthers aren't here anymore, and the Falcons are asserting their dominance. And then they lose today to the Ravens, and you start to question that. And it's anyone's game, right? Can the Eagles hop in? Can the Cardinals? The 49ers had a big win. The Bears have been a hot new team, and the Cowboys have the best record, I think, in the NFC. So
Yeah.
really, it's anyone's game. And then looking at it, the Lions, who aren't even in the playoffs today, are 6-2 and tied with a bunch of other teams in the loss column. So it's a really wide open conference at this point.
Who's the biggest surprise in the NFC, do you think?
At this point, the Bears coming in as a new team, and I understand you could be a great team in another league, but you come into a new league and you're playing against different opponents and different styles, and you don't know how anyone plays. I'd say starting out 5-0, and I know they've had their setbacks lately. They've lost the last two games. But starting out 5-0 in a new league, and not just a new league, but a league that I think is pretty competitive, that's impressive to me.
What do you think is the biggest change so far with the league this year?
I think that we had a really great core of teams, but now I feel like we have a more cohesive group of teams. We had a few people leave who may not have been the most active. We had some who were a little bit of antagonizing of their opponents. And I think that win or lose, at this point, we've got a group of guys that it's enjoyable to play with.
Right. I guess that kind of leads you to who you taking in the Super Bowl this year, the SML Super Bowl.
I said something else yesterday, but I'm going to change my pick. I'm going to take the Falcons. I think that the Falcons have been living under the Panthers' shadow. They haven't been able to get up to the Super Bowl. I know the easy answer here is the Colts. They've won a bunch and they've won against the Panthers, but I think that the Falcons are going to take it down.
And who are they going to play?
They're going to play the Colts, but they're going to upset them.
So you said the Colts make it back and then make like a 90s Buffalo Bills, and instead of winning the Super Bowl, they're just continuing to take home the toilet bowl.
Yep, that's what I'm going with.
Wow. Poor Indianapolis. So now, where's your team headed right now with the Dolphins? I mean, where do you think you could take them through the rest of this cycle?
No disrespect to any of the opponents that I've played so far, but this is probably the least confident I've felt about my play since we've started Madden. Is it 17 or 18? It's Madden 18.
This is 18, right? I think.
Yeah, this is probably the least confident I felt. My offense is really struggling, and I am just living by defense. I think I may be giving up like 8 points a game, which is sheer luck at this point. But my offense is just not moving the ball. So when I get into those tough games, I fear that to keep up if I'm not able to make stops on defense.
So you started off 7-0 this season. So obviously the playoffs are well within sights. Who do you not want to play the most on the AFC side? I mean, if there's a matchup, is it Indianapolis? Is that got to be the matchup that you don't want the most?
I want Indianapolis because if I don't beat them and I were to get to the Super Bowl, I wouldn't feel like I earned it. So I'm going to take this in a different direction. Ravens earlier this year, but I don't feel like that's a good matchup for me, and I don't want to see them again.
Really? What makes you talked about the Ravens a few times throughout this podcast. What makes the Ravens so dangerous as an opponent?
They're one of the few teams, and Buffalo had this too, which is one of the reasons they stole a game or two from me in our division earlier in the Madden. They're able to run consistently, and if they're not, they stick with it, and they'll catch you on a 3rd and 8 where they just take the run to the house when you're trying to play pass.
Yeah, that's true. I think it may have been this game against the Falcons where I think they hit either 200 yards rushing or pretty close to it. Yeah, he had 23 carries for 266 yards, which is, pretty impressive for a single game tote. Um, so is there anything else that you'd like to add tonight, or any closing thoughts?
No, I mean, I guess one thing that I think I said after you posted your last podcast, or the last one that I commented on, is if you really want to learn how to play at the end of the half, or you want to learn how to play at the end of a game, watch the way the Colts play, because they don't just make good plays, they make smart plays too. And when you're getting inside those 2 minutes and you're inside scoring range and you have the opportunity to go up eight, getting a touchdown there might not be the best play, to be honest. Just getting a couple of yards, keeping the clock moving, taking the field goal that puts you up 8 or 9, puts the game away, whereas a quick touchdown might keep your opponent in it. So watching the Colts, I mean, it's really impressive what he does.
Well, Gravesons, I appreciate your time. We've really been fighting to get this thing uh, out to the people, so I hope they enjoy this as much as I have. And I'm really glad that you took the time to hop on the podcast tonight.
Yeah, it's great. Thanks for having me.
All right, thanks, man. We'll have to get together soon.
All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was it. More exclusive content being brought to you here on Playing the Field with Future 007. That was our interview with the Dolphins owner, Gramazins. We're just hoping to keep bringing exclusive content to you guys on many platforms, SoundCloud, iTunes, and here on the YouTube. Be sure to follow us on Instagram, we are on Instagram. We are on Instagram and Twitter. Sim Madden League. Links in the description below to SoundCloud and all of that. If you're interested in hopping on the SML podcast, Playing the Field with Future 007, and you have a microphone and you're wanting to be a part of this rapidly growing community, be sure just to send me a message, you guys. You're more than welcome to hop on this show. We have a great time. We just sit here and talk about whatever, because this is my show, and I do not follow the SML Network's guidelines. We can talk about whatever we want. We will not be shut down. So thank you very much, guys, for tuning in to another wonderful episode of Playing the Field with Field Journal 007. Be sure to like, subscribe, take care, and have a great day.